Hey guys, Kirk from Cabinet Creations. In this video, we're going to talk about the cost associated with changing a layout. So this is something that is brought up to us all the time. Hey, I want to rearrange my kitchen, I want to change the layout, and that comes in a lot of different shapes and sizes. And I hope this video is actually useful for even people trying to say, hey, I want to put an addition onto my house, I want to, make my ranch into a colonial. But we're going to talk about the cost associated with changing layout and why it's so expensive. And people hear these numbers and they go, oh, I don't want to change the layout anymore. So I'd hope to sort of educate you guys and pre-inform you of the cost associated with changing a layout. So when you think about layout changes, we're going to break this down into essentially three categories. One of them being non-structural walls, or sort of changing the way the room looks. We're going to get into mechanicals, so moving things around such as plumbing, HVAC, electrical, and then we'll touch on when you get into structural changes related to layout. So first, when we think about moving like a non-structural wall, and we're mainly kitchen remodelers, we do a little bit broader than kitchen, but our bread and butter is kitchen, so I always use kitchens as an example. So we get people all the time who come to us and go, we really want to move that wall. And we go, great. We love moving walls. We got no problem moving walls. And again, I don't want you to hear this video as something negative. I just want to inform you. So we're perfectly fine with moving walls. So don't hear it any other way. But there are some realities that come with moving a wall. And you could have essentially all three mechanicals, electrical, plumbing, HVAC, in the wall you want to move. So the second you move that wall, you have to problem solve. So my wife has a wall in our house where, benefit of hindsight, she went, man, I wish we would have sort of done something different with that wall, and we looked at moving it now that we're in the home, and it has a cold air return in it. And I'm going to tell you, the cost related to moving that cold air return was it was cost prohibitive. It was like not going to happen, because that cold air return, we had to make up for that. We couldn't just delete the cold air return. We had to make up for it. So we had to get into another wall to move the cold air return. We were going to have to get essentially an engineer. So there's people out there who do all of these calculations related to essentially cold air returns, or air going back into your HVAC system, and we would have to get somebody out to calculate that. We'd have to tear down the wall, and then we'd have to move that cold air return into some other wall. And by the time we were done, we went, that was not going to be worth it to us. So the second you start moving walls, you got to think about your mechanicals. You also have to start thinking about flooring. So if you're trying to move that wall, and that wall is, has contiguous flooring around it, and you're trying to not change the flooring, you now have what is a potential, there's scenarios where you don't always have it, but you have what is a probable flooring issue, which is trying to weave in old flooring into, trying to weave in new flooring into your old flooring doesn't work very well, just to be honest. And the general move there is, you're moving that wall and we're trying to contend with some flooring issues, you replace the flooring. And so now you may have a scenario where you're trying to take down a wall in your kitchen, and now you're doing flooring in your whole house, right? I'm trying to make my pantry, I'm trying to adjust a pantry or something like that. And now that all that flooring is contiguous throughout the first floor, do you want to cut it off at the kitchen and just do the kitchen in whatever area? Do you want to do the whole space? And just get into these flooring realities that obviously flooring several thousand square feet of home can cost a lot of money. And the other thing, especially when you think about kitchens, which is what we're focused on, but these are realities to any layout change. The other reality is you're going to often add some other type of material, and in a kitchen scenario, you're generally trying to tear down a wall. For us, mostly people want to build large islands, which makes sense. Problem is, you are now buying more cabinetry. You're now buying more countertop, and I guess you're buying less flooring. But you probably weren't buying the flooring unless you were moving the wall to make the big island anyway. So, but yeah, you start to buy more cabinetry, you start to buy more countertop. And by the time you've moved your mechanicals, you've dealt with the flooring, you've bought more cabinetry, you've bought more countertop, you've paid the extra labor, you are thousands and thousands of dollars into changing the layout. So second type of layout change that we encounter all the time would be, I want to rearrange the way my mechanicals work. So maybe we're not moving a wall, maybe we're not having to deal with flooring, or we're not trying to add more cabinetry. We just went, I want my sink and my island, and I want to move the oven, and I want to move the fridge. That's something we deal with all the time. Hi, lovey girl. I'm shooting a video, okay? Okay. Ignore her. We'll just pretend she's not there. So anytime, and I'm going to sort of walk through the realities, anytime you move a fridge, something that you're not thinking about is you got to move the water line, and a lot of times you got to add an electrical outlet. Like fridge electrical outlets are often much higher. They're not on the floor. And so you got to add an outlet, you got to move the fridge water line for your ice and your water dispensing. Dishwashers, you got to move the water line. You got to move the supply lines, or excuse me, the discharge lines. And so moving a dishwasher isn't always as straightforward. You got to handle the electrical. When you move a sink, it's not just the plumbing. You got to move the electrical related to the garbage disposal. And so, oh, last one. When you move oven or range, again, you are moving either 220, you're moving the gas lines. Sometimes you're moving both. So anytime you move the mechanicals, you are adding costs. And those are all sort of labor-intensive moves. Now, they're not always high material costs, but they are very labor-intensive. And so second, you want to start changing the layout related to your mechanicals, moving your appliances. And it's no different than in bathrooms, as a side note. So you want to move where the sink goes and where the toilet is. And all. Those are generally plumbing mechanicals, but you're moving mechanicals. It takes time. It actually generally costs thousands of dollars to move any of your mechanicals. Third, but not least, and I don't know, maybe the most costly. If you are, so you can go, hey, I want to move a wall. I want to change my mechanicals. Oh, by the way, there's a structural thing that I want to change related to a kitchen. But a lot of times when you think about structural changes outside of a kitchen, this would be, hey, I'm trying to turn my ranch into a colonial. Hey, I want to add 500 more square feet onto the side of my house or the back of my house. You know, in our world, kitchens, hey, I'm moving a wall that is actually load bearing or structural or is holding the roof or the house up, depending on how you're thinking about it. And those would be essentially structural layout changes. And these are like in addition to the other things I just said, right? And so the cost related to structural changes is essentially shockingly high. Sometimes, and I'm going to throw this number out, often minimum thousands. You're never talking to an architect and engineer for less than thousands, but sometimes it's tens of thousands. It is not uncommon that by the time you're done with architectural and engineering drawings, you're $20,000 into changing the structure. And so what are the costs associated? So first and foremost, you have, not the foremost. It's not the foremost. Cities are great. We love cities. All of the cities watching this, you're the best. But, so you're not the foremost. But you do cost money. So to deal with cities, you're pulling permits, you're getting inspections, you're slowing this thing down. And by the way, those inspections and permits cost money. So you're adding that. That's usually not thousands of dollars. That might be hundreds of dollars, sometimes 1,000 plus. But you are certainly slowing the project down. You're adding costs associated with that. But then you're also getting into, as I said before, engineers and architects. If you want to, put a 500 square foot addition onto your home, you are going to involve architects and engineers. And they got big degrees and they're very expensive, rightfully so. Very smart people. I'm not saying anything wrong that they charge you, but it does cost thousands of dollars. And people get really, the second they start to hear all of these fees, they start to go, whew, that's too much. Understood. But if you want to do anything structural, you are going to get into the thousands of dollars, if not the tens of thousands of dollars, just to create drawings and structurally sound changes. Okay, so to recap the three, you have essentially layout changes that involve moving walls, you have layout changes that involve moving mechanicals, and then you have the most expensive version of layout changes, which is adding structural changes such as moving structural walls, putting 500 square foot additions on, and those all cost money. I do want to reiterate, this video isn't to be negative. I think you guys are here to learn. We're not discouraging you from doing it. We do it all the time. We love doing it. It's fun. By the time when it's all done, people love the end product. But we do want you to be educated when you show up to whatever remodeler you're talking to that these things cost money and they really stretch budgets and push people's ability to afford the project. So if you guys have any questions, we are happy to help. Don't be afraid to reach out to us. We get calls all the time, by all the time, pretty regularly from around the country. I can't come do your remodel, but I'm certainly here to help. If you have any questions, we're happy to help. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.